Okay, we're going to get started. This is Jerusalem 2017, Crisis and Opportunity. And yeah, I mean, they're going to keep coming in. Yeah. Okay, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah. So just a quick summary of this session. Jerusalem is constantly in the news, usually with headlines about violence and tension between Israelis and Palestinians. The idea of unilaterally moving the American embassy to Jerusalem will likely only add fuel to the flames. The future of Jerusalem is one of the core issues of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and answers must be found to define its future. And we were joined by two Jerusalem-based NGOs, Amim and the Palestine-Israel Journal, to discuss the possibilities and learn about their work together to empower Jerusalem's youth. So, to my left, we have Yudith Oppenheimer, the executive director of Amim, Hillel Schenker, co-editor of Palestine-Israel Journal, and Ziad Zayyad, co-editor of Palestine-Israel Journal.
Okay, hello everybody. I guess it's already good afternoon. You don't hear? Right? Hello? Yeah, now you're here. Okay, very good. So once again, hello, good afternoon. I guess we all, some of you may be eating lunch, but we'll defer lunch until after the session. I'd like to say, first of all, that my utopian vision for Jerusalem is that Tel Aviv should be the capital of the state of Israel. Ramallah should be the capital of the future state of Palestine. And Jerusalem should be an international city shared by Israelis, Palestinians, and by the three monotheistic faiths, etc. This was more or less what the original UN Security Council, what the original partition plan, okay, close, now you're here. The original UN partition plan in 1947 said that Jerusalem should be an international city, corpus separatum. Now, then and also now, I realize there's no chance that that vision that I have will be accepted by either Israelis or Palestinians, unfortunately. Although I do think that for the old city, there will have to be some sort of an international arrangement, and all three faiths should have a role. Now, before 1967, before the Six-Day War, I lived in West Jerusalem. I was on a youth leadership training program, as was Lily, right here, Lily Rivlin. Jerusalem at the time, West Jerusalem, was a small village. You could walk almost everywhere. There was no access to the old city, no access to the Wailing or Western Wall or East Jerusalem, and it was wonderful. It was a delightful place to be in, and I personally didn't miss the fact that you couldn't have access to all of these other things. Today, I live in Tel Aviv. The great advantage of Tel Aviv is that it has no holy sites to argue over and to get worked up about. Therefore, it is an open, pluralistic, tolerant city facing the Mediterranean Sea. Jerusalem, of course, has everything that it has. It has history, it has the holy places, and it also has a tremendous amount of tension and conflict. For the past 15 years, I personally have been living like a tale of two cities. I live in Tel Aviv, but I spend half of every week in Jerusalem, where the Palestine-Israel Journal, joint Israeli-Palestinian publication, the only one actually in existence today, publishes in East Jerusalem. And in many senses, it's not just a tale of two cities, it's a tale of three cities, because there is West Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, and there is Mea Sha'arim, and the ultra-Orthodox sectors. I think the ultra-Orthodox are about, you don't like that, okay. The ultra-Orthodox are about 37% of the population today, and their Jerusalem looks quite different from the other two Jerusalems. There is a tremendous disparity between East and West Jerusalem in terms of budget, infrastructure, We at the Palestine-Israel Journal offices, it rains, the electricity breaks down. There are all sorts of problems, without even talking about the disparity in economics, education, etc. Jerusalem is actually the poorest of the 15 major cities in Israel. So there is a general problem of both West and East Jerusalem in terms of its economic situation. About a year ago, I met with a group of peace activists with Mayor Nir Barkat. And I said to him, I was the only one who actually doesn't live in Jerusalem. I came from Tel Aviv, as I said. And I said to him, aren't you concerned, given the fact that the ratio today is 60% Israeli, Jewish, 40% Palestinian, combined East and West Jerusalem, with younger Israeli secular Jews tending to leave Jerusalem? Aren't you concerned that you might be the last Jewish mayor of so-called United Jerusalem? He had no answer. He preferred to evade and ignore. Today, most Israelis do not go to East Jerusalem. They don't go to much less go to the old city. I would even add that there are many Israelis who don't go to West Jerusalem. They prefer to stay away in general. And in the fall of 2015, I think it was, when we had what was called the individual or knifing intifada, people would ask me, from my neighbors in Tel Aviv, my friends, aren't you afraid of going? And the fact is, I continue to go because of the great importance of the joint work that we are doing. Now, a story from last week. About half of the taxi drivers in Jerusalem are Palestinian. And whenever I'm going from West to East Jerusalem and want a taxi and I run into a Jewish taxi driver, he says, where are you going? And I say, if I would say I'm going to the Wadi Joe's neighborhood of East Jerusalem, in many cases, in most cases, the drivers would say, no, no, I'm afraid I don't want to go there. They might throw rocks at me, who knows what. So I've developed a technique. I say to the driver, I want to go to places that he is familiar with, near the American Colony Hotel, which is a major extraterritorial place where everybody goes. It's near the Ministry of Justice on Salah ad-Din. And he says, okay, those are places I know. I'll go there. And then I say, well, here, now we turn and we go here and we go here. And then he says to me, where are you taking me? You know, if I had known in advance, I wouldn't go. And I say to him, don't you believe in a united Jerusalem? And he says, no, no, as far as I'm concerned, let the Palestinians have East Jerusalem. I don't want it. I would rather not have to go. And this is a typical response, at least that I find, among the taxi drivers. And as probably you know, journalists love to talk to taxi drivers because they are the pulse of the people. Now, despite all of this rather pessimistic description, there is a younger generation of both Israelis and Palestinians in West and East Jerusalem who are trying to change things. Just as in the previous panel, we heard relatively younger panelists saying, we're optimistic, we have strategies, there are things we are doing. And this leads us to the joint project that the Palestine-Israel Journal and Amim have been doing now for the past 2 years. We're entering the 3rd year. It's a joint project entitled Empowering East and West Jerusalem Younger Generation, Bridging Towards a Fair Political Resolution for the City. And what is happening there is we are building blocks from the grassroots, from the bottom up, not from the top down. We have had 2 issues so far which have been products, sort of climaxes of the 1st and 2nd year. The first one was Young Voices from Jerusalem, and the second one was Future Vision for Jerusalem, and we will have a third issue at the end of this year. And we will now, Yudith and Ziad will make presentations about what we're doing and the Palestinian view of the situation in Jerusalem and an Israeli view of the situation. So, Ziad?
Judith.
Judith, okay.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah, good. Thank you. Okay, so first of all, just a clarification. This panel is hosted by both PIJ, Palestine-Israel Journal, and Amim, unlike the title outside. And like Hillel already said, we have a joint project of empowering young leaders in East and West Jerusalem to bridge a political framework for the city. And under the umbrella of this joint project, we are conducting this panel as a joint panel. What you've just heard from Hillel, and thank you, Hillel, for making, is and you excuse me, Hillel, for saying that, a typical Tel Avivian view of Jerusalem. And this is unlike, the fact that Hillel is one of the very few Israelis that works in East Jerusalem on a daily basis, and what he said about the taxi driver. I just give up on Israeli taxi driver. I know they wouldn't take us to PIJ's office, to our joint meetings. But unlike this daily experience, you seem like seeing the city as Tel Avivian nevertheless. And what is for me to see the city from a Jerusalemite point of view? And I've been a Jerusalemite since the age of 6. My family moved to Jerusalem in September 1966, where I started grade 1. Yeah, you can imagine my elderly age. And I still remember, I still have a very short but very vivid memory of Jerusalem before the war, before 1967. In what way am I different from, in my view, from Hillel? Well, the corpus separatum partitional plan, that was something that could have worked in 1948, and maybe could have worked for the better of both Palestinians and Israelis living in the city. But it hasn't. So let's go back to reality. The reality is that Jerusalem is the home of 1/10 of the Israeli population. Of course, under this 1/10, there are 300 Palestinians who are not citizens of Israel. But what did I say? 300,000, near 40% of the city population, which are not citizens of Israel, which has been for the past 50 years residents of the city, but that's just a name to say not second best, but third best or something in the city. What Hillel said about the sort of danger of Mayor Breakout being the last Israeli mayor in Jerusalem, first of all, judging by his performance, let it be. But it's so unrealistic because Palestinians only on paper take part in the city election. In the last city municipal election in Jerusalem, less than 2% of the Palestinian population in East Jerusalem took part in the municipality. So they actually are non-existent. They live in the city. They are part of the city. They are totally dependent on the Israeli authorities for the very basic of infrastructure and services and everything, and just the freedom of planning and construction, which is completely denied of them. But they are not agent in the city in no way. At the same time, and we will go back to that, and we are dealing in these issues on a daily basis. At the same time, I think that we have to look at the city from the point of view of the people who live in the city and reside in the city, and not from the, just to take your notion, Hillel, about Haredi people, which for me are an integral part of the city, not a part of the city that I wish not to see. By the way, I come from a half Haredi background. In one of our work as part of this joint project, we ran a course on East Jerusalem to a Haredi group of young leaders, which, you know, if they are the future leadership of this city, let them be the future leadership of the city. It was a group of Haredi young leaders, men and women. There were 2-3 women in the group. A young generation of Haredi. I'm not idealizing, you know, I know all the problems. Actually, some of them I know from a personal background. But at the same time, there were, you know, I would, by the way, it's to run a course for Haredi young leaders. It's a very different culture about time running, you know. You start like 2 hours after the set times. And also, like, you know, Haredi have, a usual Haredi has more than one cell phone, you know. They have one kosher cell phone and one regular cell phone from which life is running. And they don't switch them off during a session. So they just keep ringing all the time, you know, and they look for is it this phone or this phone? But anyway, it was fun. They were most curious. They asked the most sharp, the sharpest questions. And something they said, one of them said at the concluding session, which was for me, you know, if it was said in a different context, I would felt like, here where I am in this story. But because it was said from such a sense of responsibility, one of them said, since this city is going to be a city of half Haredi, half Palestinians, then we bear responsibility for the future of all the people living in this city. Now, I felt like saying, hey, where am I in this story, okay? I'm still a resident of this city, and I have some friends and relatives and so on and so forth. But this sense of responsibility, you know, the understanding that what it means to be a majority, and they are not going to be a majority for a while, okay? What it means to be a majority, it means responsibility to all of the residents living in the city. That was something so refreshing that I smiled when it was said, and I made a comment about, you know, just to remember us in the story too, but it was really, really refreshing. Now, few more, can I be allowed a few more seconds? Few more, just to start the conversation. I just came from the panel on U.S.-Israel relationship and just heard from all 3 speakers, not that I never heard that before, that the chances for a 2-state resolution are actually getting very dim. I don't think it's a news for it was a brilliant discussion, but the bottom line is not a big news. What we were trying in this project is to create a leadership base from both East Jerusalem and West Jerusalem working towards imagining a resolution to Jerusalem in light of the two-state solution, because there is no other option. You know, for any other option is not a resolution. Like I think it was also said yesterday. It was a resolution, it's something else that we will have to deal with, we will have to live with, to work with, but not a resolution. But the idea behind that project was also to think about the here and now in Jerusalem. Because Jerusalem is not only an issue of which we can think about its future and live the present as is, because the present as is the present of Mayor Barkat. Maybe we will elaborate on that later on. It is not something that can continue. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. But what is also unique about Jerusalem, and is also a source for something to start with, is its concreteness. Because Jerusalem is not just an issue to deal with the future. People live in Jerusalem on a daily basis. They share a space. They share a city. Unlike those city drivers who would not, the taxi driver who would not take us to the other side of the city, there are many areas in Jerusalem in which life is shared. Not sometimes, not always ideally, but there is some practicality, something that you miss when you look at Jerusalem, if you come as a Tel Avivian. There is some practicality shared by many of the city residents, both Palestinians and Israelis, that make life in Jerusalem, manageable to some extent, and I do see the problems of Jerusalem, and I work on the problem of Jerusalem on a daily basis, but I think that we also have to build trust in the people of Jerusalem. In my dream, which are different from your dream, Hillel, in my dreams, Jerusalem is given back to its residents. And the solution for Jerusalem is worked out from the grassroots by the people of Jerusalem, in which all issues are open for discussions and needs a resolution, including the holy places. And some people do care, have very deep feelings about the holy places, both from the Muslim side and the Christian side and the Jewish side. This is a city of 3 world religions, and any solution for the city, for the time being and for the future, has to acknowledge that, and we have to be respectful of those feelings that I'm sure, many people also in this room shared. In this, and I will finish with this, in this policy paper, which is called Jerusalem, Present Home and Future Capital of Two Nations, we were trying to put together this vision of the present and the future. How the present should be read from our vision of the future of Jerusalem. And the present, which is also the key for the future, is that Jerusalem has always been and will always be a home of 2 nations. And this is the key to look at Jerusalem. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith and Hillel. I will try to be brief in order to give you time to ask questions. I will try. First of all, I'm very young. I'm still young. And I remember that before 1967, Israel for us was a puzzle. Or I would say it wasn't existing in our thinking. We did not know anything about Israel, about the Jews, anything. And there was a wall near Damascus Gate, which goes along the city, dividing it into two pieces, and that's all. It was our word. That wall was the end of the word, and we know nothing about the Israelis or about the Jews until after '67. I was the first Palestinian who went to Beit Ha'am to learn Hebrew, and I must say that my Hebrew is much better than my English. And I started opening my eyes and knowing more about the Jews. And here I started to realize that Jerusalem is important not only for me as a Muslim or as an Arab, but it's also important for the Jews. And it was something new for me. The Jews, it's important for them, but we did not know that until we became involved and we started knowing that Jerusalem is important for both sides. And when I say for the Arabs, I mean for the Christians and the Muslims, because when we say Arabs, we don't distinguish between Christians and Muslims. We all are Arabs. So I came to the conclusion that one of the major elements in the issue of Jerusalem is a mutual recognition, recognizing that Jerusalem is important for both of us, for us as Arabs, Christians and Muslims, and for the Israelis, for the Jews. And this is a basic element that if we do not accept that element, we'll get nowhere. So we must realize and understand and accept this reality that Jerusalem is for us. The situation in Jerusalem today is totally different. As Hillel spoke and as Yudith implied, Jerusalem is united, divided. Officially, it's united. After the annexation of Jerusalem in June '67, the Israelis annexed the territory and the buildings and the houses, but not the population. And the Israelis decided that all the residents of Jerusalem are Jordanian tourists who happened to be in Jerusalem on the 5th of June, and therefore they were given a permanent residence visa according to the law of entrance to Israel. And this visa could be revoked under specific conditions in the Israeli law. Until now, this is the situation. They deny on the Arabs of East Jerusalem their right to be part of the city and to live in the city. They are tourists that anytime they could be expelled. The Israeli policy is to impose a policy of converting Jerusalem to become a Jewish city with complete denial of the Arab rights in Jerusalem. I mean the Palestinian Arab right in Jerusalem. And there is a municipality which is dominated by the right wing and by the religious camp. And this municipality is trying to pressure the Arab population in all aspects of life and encourage fanatic right-wing Jews to go and settle inside the Arab neighborhoods of Jerusalem, to fragmentize the city and to separate the different neighborhoods, the Arab neighborhoods, from each other, and fragmentize each neighborhood and convert it to become a Jewish neighborhood. The discrimination against the Arabs in the city, you can find it in all aspects of life. You can find it in education, in the schools, in health, in collecting garbage, in all services of the municipality. There is a severe discrimination against the Arabs in the city. And there is a mayor in Jerusalem who aspires to be the next prime minister. And therefore, whatever he does it for political motives. and political aspirations, and not as a mayor of a city who has to care for providing services for the population of the city. So this is the situation, and with this situation, things are getting worse all the time. Recently, there was a decision by the High Court of Justice in Israel to evacuate houses in a small settlement neighborhood near Zayyad village. Ofra? No, Amuta. Amuna. And when the government lost the case in the court and they came to a deadline that they have to evacuate the houses, they declared that, okay, we will demolish all the illegal houses in Jerusalem. And they started a massive campaign of demolishing Arab houses in Jerusalem. What has this to do with a settlement in the West Bank, with a court decision? So the demolition of houses is becoming a policy which is applied on a very wide and large scale in the city. So with this policy, there is a polarization between the two populations of the city. There is a rising tension between the two populations, and this tension is rising also as a result of the government encouraging fanatic right-wing Jews to go to the Temple Mount, Al-Haram al-Sharif, and to change the status quo, Al-Haram al-Sharif, and enable Jews to go and pray in Al-Haram al-Sharif. Well, I would say that there was a status quo which everyone was living with it. Why should we change the status quo? Why should we convert this conflict from a political conflict to a religious conflict between Jews and Muslims based on the issue of Al-Haram al-Sharif? This is about the current situation in the city. The third point which I wanted to speak about is the issue of the American intention to move the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. As Hillel mentioned, the Partition Resolution 181 from 1947, Jerusalem is a separate entity. It's not recognized as part of the Jewish state or part of the Arab state, according to the Partition Resolution. And since 1948, after the war, no country in the world recognized Jerusalem as part of Israel, and even as part of Jordan. And many people doesn't know that the consul generals of the 6 major European countries, that their consul generals in the city of Jerusalem, they used before 1967 not to submit their credentials to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Jordan or to the King of Jordan. They used to submit their credentials to the governor of Jerusalem, which we call it Muhafidh al-Quds, because they did not want to give any evidence that they recognize Jerusalem as part of Jordan. And this situation continued after 1967, after the occupation of Jerusalem, that the consulates which are in East Jerusalem are taking care of the Palestinian affairs and the Palestinian population, while the embassy in Tel Aviv is caring for the Israelis. So, and nobody recognized Jerusalem as part of Israel or as the capital of Israel. So if President Trump go ahead and move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, on one hand, he is violating the Resolution 181. He's changing the reality on the ground, and he's accepting Jerusalem as part of Israel and as the capital of Israel, while the traditional policy of the United States was all the time that Jerusalem is an issue that both sides have to agree upon. And as you know, as a result of the Oslo Declaration of Principles, Jerusalem is one of the final status issues that both sides, the Israelis and the Palestinians, have to negotiate over Jerusalem and come to a solution on Jerusalem. To conclude, I must say that, first of all, the Israelis make a big mistake if they underestimate the importance of Jerusalem to the Arabs. And the Arabs make the same mistake if they underestimate the importance of Jerusalem to the Jews and to the Israelis. Any settlement to the conflict must have Jerusalem in consideration. I don't like the idea of international Jerusalem. If Jerusalem becomes an international, I don't like it. I don't like the idea of Jerusalem as an international city. An international city, it will become base for espionage, for crime, for everything. And we respect Jerusalem, and we love Jerusalem, and we should find a solution which satisfies the aspirations of both sides. For me, Jerusalem is a symbol of my dignity, of my national aspirations. And I love Jerusalem, and I don't want anyone to come from China, Japan, Latin America, and tell me that Jerusalem is an international city and they want to run the affairs of Jerusalem. We, both sides, have to come to an agreement how to run the affairs of the city. There are many scenarios, and there were many proposals and suggestions how to resolve the issue of Jerusalem. I don't think it's the time here to mention these proposals, but at the end of the day, we have to live together, and we have to be in one city, which could be two capitals in one city, or many other ideas, as I mentioned. I will stop at this point, and we'll open the floor for you to ask questions. So please.
Yeah, if people have questions, feel free to line up behind the mic and just let them know who you're addressing the question to.
My name's David Dorman. I'm from Philadelphia. I guess my question is that the topic seemed to be Jerusalem 2017 and talked about opportunities. And what I was hearing was the same thing I've been hearing for 20 or 30 years. So, one is, the question is, what are there opportunities? And two, what I noticed from a year and a half ago when I was actually in Jerusalem for the first time in about 26 years, and it was right after the Intifada, was actually putting up walls in the Arab section because of the terrorist attacks. And that seems to me to be actually a potential change. So if you would comment on those issues.
Shall we take a number of questions or a question?
We can do one at a time, it's fine.
Okay, let me speak about the wall. There were suicide attacks inside Israel, which I totally condemned and spoke against them, even in public media, not only in private meetings. Israel exploited the wall not to divide between Arabs and Jews, but to divide between Arabs and Arabs. If Israel wanted to build the wall on the 67 lines, that's fine with me, though I'm against walls. I'm in favor of building bridges, not walls. But the wall is separating the Arabs from the Arabs. I live in Azariah, which is in Bethany in the New Testament, and part of my village is inside Jerusalem, and the other part is outside Jerusalem. And the people of my neighborhood are not allowed to enter Jerusalem. And why? They want to go to East Jerusalem, not to West Jerusalem. And East Jerusalem is the Arab part of the city. So this wall is a segregation wall, and it's claimed to be for security, but it's not for security. And if you look on the wall, you will see that wherever there is an empty area, it takes the empty area and adds it to Jerusalem. Where there's a populated area, they leave the population outside the wall because they don't want Arabs. They want land, but they don't want Arabs.
If I can, thank you. If I can add to Ziad, today 100,000 around. Nobody knows the exact numbers because this is part of the issue. About 100,000 Palestinians, Jerusalemite, East Jerusalemite, holding an Israeli ID residency status, are living outside of the separation barriers in neighborhoods that are part of the Jerusalem municipality and are totally neglected and cut off from the city. In order to enter their own city, they have to go through a checkpoint. And they are denied all the services and the goods that are part of the living and in the city. If you mention all those blocks that were put around other neighborhoods, Palestinian neighborhoods, which are inside the barrier during time of terror attacks, something that the mayor, the current mayor, is very favor of. This is, in a way, an expansion of the same methods of cutting Palestinian neighborhoods from the city, and what is done as a temporary things in situation of terror attacks. If you read this is now the new Labor Party a new plan of separating Palestinian neighborhoods from the city. Now, have no mistake, this is not a plan this is not a solution for Jerusalem. It's rather a further consolidation of Israel control over East Jerusalem, while removing more Palestinian neighborhoods which seem unnecessary, okay? This is how people are treated from the city, and actually cutting them off from the city, further fragmentizing the East Jerusalem. So it's the opposite of a resolution rather than anything else. Going back to what you said, that you see no new resolution, but you are right that we see an extremization of the problems. We see the problems getting more and more extreme, and the methods used against the Palestinian population of East Jerusalem is getting harsher and harsher, and Ziad mentioned the house demolition doubled itself this year, very much with relations, but only not exclusively with relation to the Amona case. So it goes back to the issue that we have to start thinking of Jerusalem from now, because the facts that are created on the ground are removing the possibility of a vision of resolution to Jerusalem that we have seen for many years, and things we have to think about Jerusalem right at now to start this bridging framework from today, or as the situation is getting worse and worse.
West Jerusalem.
Speak more to more than Mike.
West Jerusalem is internationally recognized as part of Israel. Would it be an acceptable compromise for both sides for West Jerusalem to host an American embassy, or would this be just bad for both sides?
Well, there is no East Jerusalem and West Jerusalem. There is one Jerusalem. And moving the embassy to Jerusalem, it has very dangerous implications.
I'd like to just follow up on what Ziad said, is that there's an initiative that we have been involved in saying that it would be okay if two embassies were established, if there would be an American embassy in West Jerusalem towards Israel and an American embassy in East Jerusalem towards the Palestinian state. That would be something which would be fair, and that would be the basis upon which we would think it would be productive and constructive. But just moving it to West Jerusalem is very problematic and would probably cause a tremendous amount of negative reaction.
I also want to refer to our policy paper, American Embassy in Jerusalem only as the capital of two states.
Thank you. My name is Ruth Kaplan from San Diego. I would like you to expand a bit on the question of the demolitions and the underlying issue of problems with housing permits for construction in Arab neighborhoods and for families to grow on their own property or build on their own property.
Thank you. One of them, on the same line, you want to ask a question? Yeah. One of the most difficult things in Jerusalem for an Arab to get a permit to build a house, besides the fact that it's very expensive and there's no subsidy for the Arabs when they go to the municipality to build houses. So in some cases, some Arabs build without a permit, without a building license, and they take the risk that this house will be demolished by the municipality, claiming that this is illegal, that this was built without a building license. It's a problem. They can't afford the cost of all the fees collected by the municipality, while the Jews, they have subsidies from different governmental organizations on one hand. And when they build, because they are growing, the population is growing, and they need more housing. So there is a problem. There was a time when Arabs started moving outside the city of Jerusalem to the neighborhoods around Jerusalem. But when the Israelis built the wall, they were afraid that they will confiscate their right to go and live in the city and take their blue ID cards. So they came back again to the city, and they are living in a very difficult housing conditions inside the city.
My name is Richard Letterman from Silver Spring, Maryland. I actually wasn't aware that there was any international recognition of West Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, as a previous questioner just mentioned. But my question is, Ms. Oppenheimer mentioned that the 300,000 Arab residents of Jerusalem are, I think you said permanent residents, but not citizens, but they are given the opportunity to vote in municipal elections, but only 2% of them do actually vote. Is that correct? And why is that? Is there some way to engage them in municipal affairs that might alleviate some of this problem?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, whoever can answer.
Well, first of all, I'm surprised when Yudith said less than 2%. It's much, much less than 2%. 2% is too much. Now, for us, the issue is a political issue. If I'm living in East Jerusalem as a Palestinian and I go to elections, according to the Israeli law, I recognize the Israeli jurisdiction over Jerusalem. And there is no Palestinian who is ready to recognize the legitimacy of the annexation of Jerusalem and the legitimacy of the occupation of Jerusalem and be part of an election process. So this is why from 1967 till now, we are boycotting the elections. We don't go and vote for the municipality.
I'd like to add to that. It sounds as if here is, a democratic opportunity for Palestinians in East Jerusalem to take part in their own, affecting their own faith, and it's rejected by the Palestinians. So I think that Ziad gave a good explanation. But we also have to understand that this is not really a democratic, this is not really an answer for the status of Palestinians in East Jerusalem or an answer to the democratic challenge faced by the situation for the Israeli democracy. Because the main ruler of Jerusalem is the Israeli government, not the municipality. All the new construction, all these 50,000 housing units built in East Jerusalem for Israelis after 1967 were government projects. Most of the touristic projects in an archaeological project in the historic basin, which are actually settlement projects, like the City of David, like other national parks, all these are government projects. Government is involved in all levels of life in East Jerusalem. So to create that dual systems that they can take part, so-called, in municipal elections, which has only limited effect on their life, and not taking part in national elections, that is a situation rejected by the Palestinians, and for very, very, very good cause. And this is a situation, a real challenge, faced by, we are now completing 50 years of, I think it's the East Jerusalemite Palestinian population is, I think, the only population in the world that for 50 years has been denied political rights of any sort.
My name is Lily Rivlin, and I'm a seventh-generation Jerusalemite. And I don't agree with Hillel that in the days of the Mahon it was good enough, because I always wanted to go to the other side. And when I was born, there was another side, because we're getting Ziad. We're both getting on, and we've been at this for a very long time. My question is, can there be a solution to the Jerusalem problem without an overall solution to the conflict?
As I said in my short presentation,
I wanted to bring up the Ben-Benisti plan. Just think about whether it's still applicable.
I said that there will be no settlement with the conflict without a settlement for Jerusalem issue. Jerusalem is the heart of the conflict. And there will never be any Palestinian state without Jerusalem. There will be no Palestinian leader who will dare to sign any agreement with Israel without Jerusalem. And this is why I said that both sides should not underestimate the importance of Jerusalem to the other side. You go to East Jerusalem, Hillel comes to East Jerusalem. There are some few Israelis who come to East Jerusalem, but we know them, they know us, and they are active in peace. But the majority of the Israelis, they don't dare to come to East Jerusalem. I used to go to West Jerusalem. Now I don't go to West Jerusalem. I feel afraid. There are many Palestinians, even if they have a permit to go to Jerusalem, they don't dare to go to West Jerusalem. And there were, as you know, that there were many, many, many cases where Arabs in West Jerusalem were attacked by fanatic Jews because they are Arabs. Many Arab workers who work in Israel, sometimes when they work late at night and they're in the street, they are subjected to attacks, to stabbing or beating, and they are taken to hospitals. Some taxi drivers, some bus drivers, some cleaning workers. So the situation is not normal.
Two related questions. Two related questions. One, what about taxes? Do the Arab residents of Jerusalem pay taxes to the Israeli government and to the municipality? And the related question is, what functions does the municipality perform? That is, we talked about housing permits. I read about sewage problems. I don't understand the distinction between what the municipality does and what the Israeli government does, because I'm ignorant.
Judith said something very important. She said that there are 100,000, about 100,000 Palestinians who have Jerusalem IDs, but they are left outside the wall. All the Arab neighborhoods with Jerusalem ID who are outside the wall, they receive 0 municipality services, nothing. But because they have Jerusalem ID, the blue ID, which enables them to go to Jerusalem without needing a permit, they pay all the fees to the municipality, including what is called arnona, which is housing fees. And it's ridiculous to see that there are some Palestinians who build apartment buildings in these areas, and when they advertise their apartments, they say that there is arnona in these apartments. And people go and buy these apartments because they pay taxes to the municipality and they guarantee for themselves the right to go to the city. Any Palestinian who goes to the Ministry of Interior Affairs for anything, to register a child, to register a wife, to apply for a laissez-passer, for anything, they give him a list of documents that he should provide to prove that he is living in Jerusalem. Between the things which they ask him to prove is to prove that he is paying arnona to the municipality. So people pay all these municipality fees to the municipality without receiving any services in return.
Just to follow Ziad, Palestinians make up 37% of the city population and receive less than 10% of the city budget. These are and they do pay the arnona, the municipal fees, actually in big numbers because of this combination of pressures that and the fear of losing their permanent residency would be revoked, their proof of being part of the city and being entitled to permanent residency is their payment of that they have a property in the city and pay the city municipality. So they do pay the taxes and receive so little from the poverty rate in East Jerusalem amount to near 80%, and 82% of the children in East Jerusalem live under poverty. Just about 10 years ago, before the separation barrier was built, the rate of poverty in East Jerusalem was 60%, which is it's in itself, it's enormous, 60%. But today, 10 years, or a little bit more than 10 years later, the poverty rate in East Jerusalem is, like I said, near 80% and 82% of the children. Now, we are raising a new generation in East Jerusalem of children who are born into poverty, grow in poverty. There is a lack, and also there is a lack of all the supporting services. There is a lack of more than 2,000 classrooms in East Jerusalem. So not only that they are born and grow up in poverty, all the necessary infrastructure to support children in their upbringing is lacking.
I had a question. You had mentioned the Haredi population, and if they are distinct from religious Zionists, the more extreme right wing, and if they are allies with the Palestinians and finding a solution. If this is a distinct population different than those who are now controlling Israeli government and
those who are not?
Those who are controlling Israeli government, religious Zionists, the settler movement, are they distinct from the Haredi population?
Yes, the Haredi population is distinct from the nationalist religious population. Originally, the nationalist religious is predominantly right wing. The case with the Haredi is more complicated. Originally, they are not in the right wing. They detach themselves from Zionism as a whole, and there was an original Haredi community living in Jerusalem for generations before the rise of Zionism and lived more or less in peace with Arab neighbors. And the attitude as a whole was to refrain from nationalism as a whole. But as they become part of the coalition, there has some, the gap between nationalist religious and Haredi somehow get narrower. So you hear more the right-wing opinions expressed by Haredi also today, which is part of their being also their integration into Zionism and to the Israeli society as a whole. But yet, I think that we can find, and I also think, am talking from my background, I think that I'm sitting here in this panel saying what I'm saying because of my background, because of the, from the way I was brought up by my parents, in which Judaism and humanism was one thing. Then I think that they are still varied, and there is a sense of pragmatism. And I think this is what we are lacking in Jerusalem today and in Israel as a whole, is not only the idealism of humanism and so on, but also a sense of pragmatism. There is a sense of pragmatism in Jerusalem as a whole that is usually overlooked. Otherwise, you know, we wouldn't get up in the morning and go to work and just lead so-called, somehow, normal life, you know. It's this sense of pragmatism. And you see it also among Haredi. And I think that we have to, and this is also for the question of, you know, what is new. Unfortunately, there is not much new. But if there is new, it's for the worth. But I think that we have to start from this vision of Jerusalem as a home of two nations and start to build pragmatism, build on this vision, and start from there towards a future resolution. But we have to start here now. It's already too late.
I'd like to add that Dr. Laura Wharton, who's the head of the opposition in the small opposition in the municipal council, told me that her view of Mayor Barkat, who is a wealthy, multi-millionaire entrepreneur, high-tech entrepreneur like Naftali Bennett, her view of his policy is that he would like to drive what he considers to be the weaker elements within Jerusalem society out of the city and replace them with stronger elements. The weaker are the Palestinians and the ultra-Orthodox Haredim, and he would like to see people from France and America, wealthy people coming into the city. That won't work. And what we are looking at is the possibility of building the beginning of an alliance between Palestinians, ultra-Orthodox, and also liberal Israeli Jews who, this is some of the things that we see in the project that we are doing together. We had a joint seminar in Seville, Spain, which was a place where Jews and Muslims once lived together, the golden age of Spain. And there were Israelis, including Haredim, 10 young Israelis, 10 young Palestinians, and they began talking about their Jerusalem. Each one presented their Jerusalem and talking about discovering each other and talking about ways of possibly building towards the future.
I want to make sure we have time to get all questions in, so let's do two now, and then we'll have them answer, and then the last two.
So my experience of Jerusalem when I lived there, and I will live there for a year next year, is that the biggest political war in West Jerusalem isn't necessarily fought on the city council, on the municipality. It's fought in the soccer field. I think that Beitar Yerushalayim is a hotbed of fomenting hatred towards Arabs, and that its counterpart, which is promoted to the Ligat Ha'al, Hapoel Katzmont Yerushalayim, is probably the strongest mass voice of connecting people together in Jerusalem. Do you think that instead of letting this be an organic project, hoping for the best, hoping that Hapoel doesn't fall apart like Hapoel Tel Aviv did, but actually consciously supporting it as a vehicle for people to meet each other, for have this political connection brought onto the streets and have people trust each other? Do you think that's something that you would consider to consciously promote, consciously advocate for?
Thank you. And next one.
Hello. I was wondering if this may seem a bit bizarre of a solution, I guess, to the conflict in Jerusalem, but that in which maybe, can you give a suggestion of a model? Like, would you say, for example, like the model in Brussels, where you have French-speaking and sort of the Flemish-speaking governments controlling different portions and different like services for the people in Brussels, would that be a good solution? Or if Jerusalem were to become its own state or to be administered by the UN, such that Israel or like Palestine would not have forces over Jerusalem, it'd sort of be a neutral hotbed in which people, residents from both, hopefully two states, would be able to congregate. And I was just wondering if you could talk about the vitality of any of those propositions.
Thanks.
Let's take the
All
remaining.
right, we can finish up the last two as well.
I think hi, my name is Malka Soroyo from Baltimore, and I think we're all, maybe all four of us hopefully, on solutions. So my question was if you could say another word or two about the work you're doing with youth and give us a maybe hopeful note to end on some of the success.
Thank you. And the last.
Hi. Okay, I have two questions actually.
I'm going to have to limit you to one. You can ask the second one at the
What?
end. Limit you to one question. You can ask the second
Okay.
at the end.
So as an offering of like solutions, I guess, I'm just curious your guys' thoughts. Like, is there a way that everyone, in theory, all the residents of the city were to get citizenship, and then like I feel like starting kind of similar to the civil rights movement, working from the bottom up in the education system of having like both Palestinian and Israeli children going to the same schools. I feel like that may be like a step towards like working as like the city together and all the residents together with equal rights. I'm just curious your thoughts.
Thanks.
Okay. I hope to remember all the questions and make all the threads necessary. I'll start from the last question. I think that, and I don't want to speak for my partners here, but I think that we share the vision of an open city. An open city is not one city. By the way, in Amim, we call the current situation, it's not מאוחדת, united, and it's not מחולקת, divided, it's מאוחלקת, which is something really really distorted of combined מאוחדת and מחולקת, divided and united at the same time. So an open city is neither divided, it's neither united, it is divided in terms of the administration. There are two capitals in Jerusalem administered by the Palestinian and the Israeli leadership. However, the city is open, which is what I think most residents of the city appreciate on a daily basis, and it expresses the view. Of course, it's not necessarily the only view, but it's a possible view of the city. At the same time, Jerusalem has always been the city of its communities, and even at peaceful times, communities in Jerusalem lived within themselves. And I don't think that there is a bilingual school in Jerusalem, Yad B'Yad. It's a wonderful school, but I don't believe it would be the choice of the majority of the city population. And I think that it would take years before it can happen. And we have to respect the way of lives of Jerusalemites and the different communities in Jerusalem. I'm sorry if I missed some issues, but you will just football. Okay, I'm so impressed by the level of knowledge. I wouldn't put all the evils on Beitar Yerushalayim. Although what is happening now, La Familia, this very fascistic group that is, I would ask, where are the authorities? How the authorities are allowing La Familia to prevail, how the authorities allow the equivalent of La Familia, the Leava group, to come to Zion Square every week and use the propaganda from there, and they are not stopped. So the question for me goes to the authorities. At the same time, an initiative like Hapoel Katamon, which is an open Hapoel Katamon, I mean, it's a wonderful initiative. Let them be a lot more of Apropos Katamon Yerushalayim in all sorts of level of life in Jerusalem.
Thank you, Judith. I have to rush for another panel, so I will say a few words before I leave. First of all, the situation in the city is not a pleasant situation. And politics are poisoning our life. Anything you do in the city, you always have to think about politics. It's a dream to start building peace between people from bottom up and to bring youth together and bring people together. It's a dream, but it's not a very realistic dream. We're involved in a project bringing some Israeli youth and Palestinian youth in Jerusalem, but it's a drop in an ocean. And the Palestinians these days are very offended from the issue of normalization. If you say that I want to organize an activity between Israelis and Palestinians, the first thing people say, you are normalizing relations with the occupation. So this is a major problem, which is the occupation. And about workshop between youth, about joint programs, it's nice, it's beautiful, we like it, we love it, but we can't do it as much as it should be done or as we want to do it. The city, it should be the city of its people, it should be joint. We should find an arrangement or a solution which will be satisfactory to everybody. But again, don't forget that there is an occupation and there is normalization of the occupation. There are two offended communities which do not trust each other, and they feel that the other is the enemy, and the effort which has to be done is how to change the image of the other. And it's not an easy job. Without a real political process of resolving the whole conflict, we cannot do anything in Jerusalem, any real thing in Jerusalem. Thank you.
I'd just like to clarify that despite the utopian vision that I said at the beginning, I also believe the realistic solution is a shared open city, the capital of two states, possibly a borough system with a joint municipality would be a practical arrangement. And as far as sports is concerned, I didn't like your comments about Hapoel Tel Aviv, which is really in tremendous trouble, and that's my team. But you should know that 1/5 of all of the soccer players in the top league, in the Israeli league, are Palestinian Israelis, and there's only one team which has never had, because of its fan base, a Palestinian Israeli player, and that is Beitar Jerusalem, which has this problematic Kahanistic, fascistic fan base, and there's no question that the counterpoint, Hapoel Katamon, the fan base of working together, that's a model which we all should definitely encourage.
And on that note, we will end. Thank you all for coming. Please consult your app.